cat. Why are we sitting under the tree? Now we're all tangled. Hey, good morning everybody. Crafting Journey here on my channel, Crafting and Crime Daily. Welcome. I am out for the morning walk with the doggies and the kitty who is under the car. It is really cool out this morning, which I am loving. And prayers to those people in Florida, exactly where I used to live, Port Charlotte. I am so sorry you guys are going through this. I'm just glad that I'm not. Because it's hell going through one of those hurricanes. It really is. I hope you guys evacuated and that when you do come home, you'll have a home to come home to. Honestly, I do. Okay, so sorry for that. It is National Good Neighbor Day, and I had some really good neighbors down in South Florida. Well, it wasn't South Florida, it was West Florida, just below Sarasota where I lived, and that's where the hurricane is headed. I know. My heart is very heavy for you guys, really, really and truly. But today, I've got some good trial updates for you, so stay tuned on National Be a Good Neighbor Day. Hey, good morning everybody. Crafting Journey here, that Journey chick on Instagram, and the leftovers on my new YouTube channel, which you can get to by following the link that is down in the description. That is where I am starting a new business where I resell undervalued items on eBay for a profit. Not much of a profit, but a profit. But it's going. Let me tell you, I'm not going to say well, or it's just a slow burn, but I am having fun with it. I'm learning what sells and what doesn't sell, and some things need to sit longer than other things. It's a whole new business, yeah, and I have to learn it. And I didn't put any lights on today. Let's put some lights on. That's better. I've shed a little light on the subject here. I'm still working on the Black Lab. That's going to be a long time project. Yes, it really is. But that's okay. What else have I got to do, right? I do want to, I've got my hat on. This is crocheted. I crocheted this last year. One of my favorite patterns, and I used to wear hats in every show. And I went out this morning to walk the animals, and it was so cool. I'm so glad I had on long sleeves because it was that cool. And it's fall now, and I just want to get into the fall kind of a mood. Yeah. So I was not done putting down this symbol here. There we go. I am going to get out some of the watercolors probably later on this evening and work on my watercolors. What I've been doing is making cards for my members and for people that are subscribers that purchase from me in my resale business. If you're a subscriber and you happen to purchase something, please let me know that you're a subscriber, because sometimes your name doesn't match with your YouTube name. Let me know so I can be a little extra and put in one of my watercolor cards for you, because I'm quite proud of my watercolor painting. I know I'm not the best, but I have fun with it. Now, my sister yesterday was kidding down her painting. She is so funny. She said, "Can I have a container to put these leftover drills in?" She was putting them in packages and putting the numbers on them, like you're supposed to do when you kid down. It's what I always recommend. I have big, like these storage containers here. I have a couple of those where I save all my square drills. Most of the round ones I probably toss. I used to save the round ones, but so she's like, "Do you have something I can put these in?" And I'm like, "Yeah, there's this little," I gave her this like little container. She's like, how how am I going to keep them in order? I'm like, keep them in order. Just toss them in the bag. she, she's like, oh no, the librarian in me can't, that won't let me do that. I have to keep them in order. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, Tootsie wants back in. 1 minute. So today I am going to have lunch with one of my coworkers. You know, when I was working, every Wednesday we'd walk over to the McDonald's. So I'm gonna pick her up in front of the hospital today, and we're gonna go over to the McDonald's and have a chit chat. She texted me last night, and she's like, "I need to talk to somebody." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Um, I don't think it's work related. I think it's something with her personally. So I will go lend an ear and just, a lot of times people just need to get things off their chest. They don't want advice, they just want someone to talk it out. Sometimes when you talk something out with someone, you can actually, you not only do you feel better, but you can maybe work out a solution for yourself. So I'm going to give her an ear and let her talk and see if we can figure out, see if that'll help her while I munch on a Big Mac. Now, I don't know if I'm going to have a Big Mac. I don't know. McDonald's burgers are pretty good, but I think my favorite is the double cheeseburger. Maybe I'll get a double cheeseburger. I don't know. So last night I was watching on Netflix. Hi, baby. Hi. I was watching a Netflix. No, it was not Netflix. I'm sorry. It was Hulu. It was 9/11. It was a story of this woman, Carolyn Rivera, I think her name was, and it was a story about how her family searched for her for months after 9/11. On the day of 9/11, she was working as the vice president of this financial company on the 96th floor of Tower One. And she actually called her husband and said she was downstairs. She had left her purse upstairs and her phone upstairs, and she was using someone else's phone, and that she was okay. So he's like, okay, I'm on my way. So he's trying to get to her, to the World Trade Center, and by the time he has to abandon his car, because obviously he said I couldn't get to the World Trade Center in traffic. So he abandons his car and he walks to the World Trade Center. By the time he gets there, Tower One had collapsed. And he's like, oh my God, where's my wife? Where's her building? And super interesting story, because it was months and months and months before they were able to bring some closure to this guy. Like, he got home that night and there was a message on his answering machine from this woman who said, your wife is fine. She helped me. She calmed me down and helped me get down the stairs. And I just wanted you to know that she was okay. But she never shows up. She just completely disappeared. So he's thinking all these months she must have got out of this building. He's checking every hospital and doesn't never find her. And he had 3 children, and one of the children participated in the documentary. She was 8 years old at the time, so now she's 29. And so she talked about all of this from her perspective. It's very interesting, very interesting. But the family did finally get closure, but it took forever. And I was surprised at the end of this documentary how many families, like there's 1,100 people that have not been identified. Like 1,100 families that are still waiting for some kind of closure. They don't know what happened to their loved ones. I mean, they can surmise that they died in this building collapse when one or the other building collapsed, but Like they don't know. They've gotten no closure. And they are still, 21 years later, identifying, trying to identify body parts. Like, oh, that's so crazy. There were that many body parts that they had to identify. You're like, I didn't tune into this show to talk about body parts. Well, this is crafting and crime. I craft and talk about crime. All right, lettuce. Yeah, I also baked brownies yesterday. I'm a very multi-talented person. I baked brownies. I played Disney's Dreamlight Valley. Thank you so much, Vixie Foxhaven. She came into the chat and helped me through a difficult puzzle. There was a little, literally, it was a little puzzle that you had, a riddle you had to solve, and the chat was trying to help me solve this riddle. And finally, I Googled it, but Vixie helped me out. I'm like, I knew that yeah, it sounds so strange. I knew I had to buy tomato seed. And I'm like, where do I get the tomato seed? Yeah. How am I going to find tomato seed? And I'm running all over the place looking for tomato seeds. You're like, what? All right. All right. Well, let's go to the crafting and crime. First, let's talk about our favorite subject, Alex Jones. Like, who doesn't love a good Alex Jones story in the morning? So, yesterday, trial did resume in the Alex Jones case. And as I said last week or earlier this week, I don't remember when I said it, the prosecution was not done, or the plaintiff in this case, this is not a criminal case, the plaintiff in this case was never finished putting on the victims to testify. So they put on Julian Soto, who was the sister of Vicky Soto, who perished in this mass shooting. And she testified that she had been accosted at a charity event. Like these families were being harassed and threatened. It was just awful what they went through. The next family to testify was Ian and Nicole Huckling. They had a 6-year-old son that died that day. This was a bunch of first graders. His name was Dylan, and they also were being threatened and harassed, and people were sending them pictures of dead children. How horrible is that? You know, just based on what they would hear on the Alex Jones show. What a bunch of nuts. Yeah. So that trial will resume today. Then we have the George Wagner trial. They continued with the ballistics expert, and he was able to identify that there were 3 weapons found amongst all, or not found, but identified for all the different crime scenes based on the casings and the bullets that were found in the bodies. A 40 caliber Glock pistol, a 22 Weather Colt pistol, and an SKS rifle. Now, isn't that interesting? If George didn't pull the trigger, there were enough weapons for George to have a weapon, his brother Jake to have a weapon, and his father to have a weapon. So they all had weapons. So are they going to say George didn't use his weapon? I mean, there were bullets found from all 3 guns in the victims. So that tells me that George participated. But I don't know. So the crime scene investigator testified that there were 3 cameras that were found on Kenneth's property that were mounted on a shed. So they followed the wiring of these cameras, and they were not attached to anything. They were dummy cameras. Then they took some stairs that went underneath the shed. They followed the stairs down into a marijuana grow room. So that's what was going on Kenneth's property. he was growing marijuana. But interestingly enough, the medical examiner testified about the toxicology of all 8 of these victims, and only one of these victims had anything abnormal, and that was Gary Roden, Chris's brother. He had cocaine in his system. Now we know that everything we've heard so far that Chris was trying to help Gary get clean from drugs. None of them had marijuana in their system, so they weren't. This was not for their personal usage. This was their business. That's what that tells me. And Kenneth had caffeine in his system. Yeah, but no one else had anything in their system when they died. So in this shed, there was no evidence of forced entry. So nothing to say that whoever killed him wanted or even tried to access that shed. So on the stand now, and yesterday afternoon as well, is a shoe print expert who opted out. So what that means, the judge has given different witnesses the option to opt out, meaning no cameras, no recordings. So we don't know what's being said, other than, we'll hear from a reporter later on what the testimony is of this shoe print expert. Okay. I'll accept that. So Nicholas Cruz, now yesterday was a very interesting day in the Nicholas Cruz trial. So we first had a couple of sheriff deputies, one from the jail where he spent quite a bit of time, and this officer found 30 hate-filled pages of writings and drawings. And apparently one of these pages claimed that Nicholas had been driven to commit this shooting by an Instagram post that sexually humiliated him. So that led him to kill all these people at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, according to one of his writings. Then there was another letter read that was found in his cell where he asked the families to forgive him for what he's done and that he would like to die a slow and painful death. Now, I don't disagree with that. Although lethal ingestion is not slow, and I don't believe it's painful either. So then another deputy came on and he read to the jury several social media posts that were hate-filled, misogynistic, and racist, basically. And he read a lot of those social media postings by Cruz to the jury. Just as an aside, Nicholas Cruz turned 24 this past weekend. Yeah. Now, the jury was shown some swastikas. There was a lot of motions about whether they would be shown these swastikas. Finally, the judge allowed them to show the swastika that was on the magazine of the rifle that he used. And I will show you a picture of that. You have to really look to see it. And according to Nicholas, swastikas meant they were a Native American symbol of peace. That's what it meant to him. I've never heard of that, but in any case. Then we had testimony from a forensic psychologist, Charles Scott, who said he examined Nicholas over 3 days. He spent 21 hours with Nicholas Cruz. And he said he is not as mentally incapacitated as the defense is making him out to be. They showed a clip of him explaining some very complicated chess moves and game, and chess is a very complicated game. He diagnosed him with a borderline personality disorder and an antisocial personality disorder, and said that there was some evidence that he was malingering. Now, what is malingering? Malingering means he was basically lying about his condition, like he was making it out to be worse than it actually is for gain, you know. So that testimony was not complete when the judge stopped the direct examination and said, "We're having a hurricane and the courthouse is closing." So she sent everyone home again for the remainder of the week, because the courthouse would be closed for the remainder of the week, because in this case is taking place, this trial is taking place in South Florida, in Broward County, Fort Lauderdale. And while they are not directly in line for this hurricane, they are getting the outer bands of the hurricane. So I understand why they're closing everything. This hurricane is massive. And I looked this morning, and it looks like the eye is just about to come ashore where I used to live in Port Charlotte. And in fact, there were some storm chasers I found on YouTube that were actually in that town and showing footage of the wind whipping around and the rain. And I didn't see any storm surge yet, but I don't think we're going to know the full extent of this until the thing actually passes. And then it's going to head right over to Orlando. I mean, the entire state of Florida is just getting hammered right now with rain and wind. And, you know, my heart goes out to each and every one of my Florida subscribers. I love you all. I hope you got out of Florida. That's what I would have done. I would have got in my car and left town while the getting was good. If you didn't, I hope you're safe. You know, please let me know that you're safe. I do worry about you guys. I do. That hurricanes are not fun. They're not fun. I remember spending weeks away from my home somewhere else because I had no electricity, um, suffering through caffeine headaches because I had no caffeine, and becoming violently ill because of lack of caffeine. Which reminds me, I'm drinking coffee out of my Craftably mug today. I am not sponsored by Craftably. I just happen to like it really, Amy and Michael really well. The owners of that company and I are friends, so I just like them. So that was the Nicholas Cruz case. Now we are also covering the case of Nikki Sue Insel. So it kind of, everything I told you yesterday was pretty much spot on, but there were a few details that I did not know about. So yesterday were the opening statements in this Capitol building that I told you was converted into a courthouse. Now, they didn't really show much more than they didn't show the balcony or anything like that. It all looked very much brand new. It looked like there was enough room in there that everyone could be socially distanced. I did not see a big crowd. I don't know if they were expecting a big crowd. Maybe it's the next case that they're expecting a big crowd for. I don't know. But I did not see a big crowd. And the prosecutor was just one prosecutor. There was not two or three prosecutors sitting at the table, just one woman who was probably, I'm going to guess, in her 40s, maybe. Big shouldered woman, not wearing a suit. She got up and she did her opening. Not dynamic by any stretch of the imagination. She just calmly went through her opening. And then when she was examining the witnesses, she didn't even stand up. She just sat there and did it from her chair, which I thought was strange. But every state has their own way of doing things. And we're in North Dakota for this one. So one of the things, this was a love triangle between Nikki Sue Insel. Her husband, Chad, was murdered with the help of her lover, Earl Howard. Now, just a little bit about this murder. Prior to or during the planning of this murder, Nikki Sue had made plans with Earl Howard. They were going to accomplish this murder, collect the insurance money, and then move to Texas. They were shopping for a home in Texas. She had a job interview lined up in Texas. I mean, they had everything planned out. So one of the plans was to make this look like a suicide. And so they put the shotgun next to him after he was shot twice by Earl. They put the shotgun next to him. They made sure that they only left one shell. They picked up the second shell because you don't shoot yourself twice when you commit suicide. They put the propane heater next to the bed, hoping it would catch fire. They put it in a very scary location, and then they kind of made it all look like it was a suicide. Then they go back to their motel that he rented for her. They wake up the next day, check the media, no fire. They had expected overnight there would be a house fire and they would discover the body. Didn't happen. So they returned to the home. Now, how does law enforcement know all this? Well, apparently they had in this home very good camera. They had a camera system. They had alarm system on the door. So the alarm system tells law enforcement every time somebody went in or out the door. The cameras caught footage of her, Nikki Sue, entering the home on the night of the murders at between 7 and around 7 o'clock with a strange man who turned out to be Earl Howard. They enter the home. They're there for about an hour and a half. Now, during this period of time, Chad is not home. He is participating in his bowling league. So during this hour and a half, you see, or we haven't seen it yet, but we're going to be seeing footage of Earl and Nikki removing all of her belongings, all of her children's belongings. So apparently her children this was over the Christmas holiday, so her children were visiting her grandparent or their grandparents, Marcus and Christopher, and they were from a previous marriage that was confirmed. Chad was not the father of these two boys, or a previous relationship, I should say. Who knows these days if they were married. But in any case, they remove all of the belongings, and then I don't know where they take them. Maybe they take them back to the hotel. I don't know. But then the camera goes out after that. It's set to private, and there's no more camera footage. But we know we're going to learn from the alarm that someone re-entered the home at 1 a.m. and was there till around 3:30, and it's surmised that that's when the shootings occurred. So Nikki and Earl, they go back over to the home when they discover, well, there was no house fire overnight, and they try it again. They again, position the propane heater so they hope it catches fire. Now, the shooting was on the 30th. Now we're talking the 31st. January 1st is a holiday. Now, on the 31st and the 30th, when Nikki returned to her hotel, she called her husband in sick for work. Yeah. January 1st was a holiday. The house still didn't catch fire, even after the second attempt. Now, on January 2nd, when Chad does not report for work, his coworkers become concerned. So they call Nikki, and Nikki says, "I'm busy. I'll just check when I get home." So Nikki, they're still trying to stage a fire. They go back over there, and this time a fire is lit in the basement at the furnace and in the bedroom. Then she leaves and she calls the non-emergency line of 911 and very calmly says, "I think there's a fire in my home and my husband's in the house." And then she calls 911 sometime after that, and we do get the first witness on the stand is the 911 operator, and we hear the 911 tape, and she very calmly tells the 911 operator, I tried to enter the home and it was full of smoke and I couldn't get to my husband. And she's very calm. And then I think about halfway through the call, she realizes, oh, I'm not supposed to be calm. So then she's all of a sudden she starts like hysterically crying, and this continues for a while. And she kept saying, "Where are they? Where's the?" And he's like, "They're on the way. They're on the way." I don't know like distances in Bismarck, like if it's densely populated. I'm not sure, but it does take them a hot minute to get there. Um, Literally a hot minute. Now, I'm thinking when I hear the term arson and that they responded to this fire, I'm thinking the home just went up in flames. No, not true. They had such difficulty starting a fire that they had to use the furnace. Now, there was a fire at the furnace level, but so the firemen, they geared up, they put all their equipment on, they go in. Yes, there's smoke everywhere. They go in, they find that there's this primary fire in the basement, and then there's also smoke coming from the bedroom where there's a small fire at the propane tank. But they find this body lying in the bed, and the guy has been shot. So they're thinking it's a suicide. So the next person to take the stand is the initial firefighter who finds the body, and he says he leaves the home and he calls for his supervisor because he doesn't want to get on the radio and say, "Hey, I found a dead body." So he calls for his supervisor. He tells his supervisor what he's found. There's a body, a double barrel shotgun. There's this propane tank. It looks like this guy killed himself. So they bring the medical examiner out to the scene. They say, yes, we need to do an autopsy. They take the body for the autopsy, and we'll hear from the medical examiner at another time. They also put another first responding officer who had the similar experience. He gets there and he sees the body and he finds the double barrel shotgun and the shell. And so all this evidence is collected. So am I missing anything? I think that was everything that I wanted to add to that case. Oh, Chad had a life insurance policy of $600,000, and the beneficiary was Nikki Sue. So not only the $28,000 renter insurance policy, but the $600,000 life insurance policy that she was trying to get. So yeah, that was everything that went on in that case. So what happened this day in history? So on this day in history in 1994, the passenger ferry Estonia sinks during the middle of the night. Now this is one of those ships that was it was a passenger and a vehicle ferry, and it would take people from Estonia to Stockholm, Sweden. And it was an overnight cruise. So at night they would have this huge smorgasbord, and there would be drinking and dancing, and then they could all go down into their cabins and sleep, and the next morning they could get in their vehicles and just drive off the ferry into Sweden. Well, overnight the waves got to be 10, 15 feet, and the ship just sank, killing 852 people. I know. One of the worst maritime accidents in history. Yeah. So that's this day in history. I'm just full of wonderful news today, aren't I? Hurricanes and criminals, and just come to me for the good news, right? Like I said, I baked brownies yesterday. There's the good news. All right. I will see you tonight in Crafting and Crime. Oh no, what's tonight? Craft with Me Wednesday. Yeah, at 6:30 p.m. Craft with Me Wednesday, where I will do some watercolor painting, or maybe I'll start a loom hat. I don't know. We'll see. At 6:30. Take care. Bye.